racism on a platform whose motto is money is temporary, Jesus is eternal. He will join me later. Liberals say this is exactly what they've been warning about, that the post-BLM backlash and the crushing of DEI has provided a fig leaf for outright bigotry. Conservatives were similarly outraged by the support for Carmelo Anthony, an alleged murderer who's been glorified by some as a victim of a racist system. We're here to debate all this as the host of the Fresh and Fit podcast, Myron Gaines, the host of Night School on YouTube, Mark Lamont Hill, Lily Gaddis, a social media commentator whose video defense of the N-word mother has so far been viewed millions of times on X, and the New York Post columnist and author Ricky Schlott. Well, welcome to all of you. Ricky, look, my take on this is a stain on all their houses, right? I just don't know what is happening to society when you have such vast sums of money being raised for what seems to me to be deliberate, racially charged, motivational reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're fighting ugly with ugly right now. And I think this level of racial tribalism and hostility is just simply not sustainable in such a diverse democracy like America. I think it's, one is really a reaction to the other. I think both campaigns are really hideous, and I think we're showing our ugliest colors. I mean, in the scheme of things, these are small sums relative to the population of America, but you do see, I think, a really tremendous explosion of ugliness and racial hostility that I think that we should all be ashamed and embarrassed of.
Yeah, I mean, you described it, I think, in one of your posts as genuinely, is this a psyop? This would be the best $1 million invested by a foreign adversary to start a race war in America. And I knew exactly what you were getting at, because many of the comments, I think the comments have now been suspended actually on both of these funding pages, because people were quite obviously deliberately misusing them to post race baiting commentary.
Absolutely. I mean, if you go through some of the comments on either of them, you have White Lives Matter on one side and like suggestions that the teenage boy who was stabbed was somehow like a manifestation of white supremacy, and it seems to be just a fight at a track meet that has nothing to do with racial hostility in the first place. And the poor father of this young man who died too said, please don't make this into a racial issue. And yet on his own Give, Send, Go campaign, there are comments after comment saying this is White Lives Matter, we're avenging against Carmelo Anthony's family. I mean, on all ends, this is ugly. I think that it's really co-opting the charity and giving community. I mean, I feel bad for the fundraising platforms, because I don't think this was the intention originally. But unfortunately, I think that people are really starting to take over good intents and the charity industrial complex to make it into a victim industrial complex. And it's really sad to see. Well,
we're going to have one of the founders of the Give, Send, Go site a little later in the program. But Mark Lamont Hill, you were shaking your head there. I mean, what's your take on this?
There are a couple of things that were said that I think are really interesting and important. One, there is an outside audience of people who are watching all of this and opportunistically using it for their own agendas and projects. You know, I have an investment in believing X, so I'm going to jump in the comments of this GoFundMe, etc. I have an investment in Y, I'm going to do the same thing. But what I don't want to do is compare these two things as if they're opposite sides of the same coin. For me, the intention of the campaign matters. In the case of this woman who is using the N-word, the woman isn't disputing using the N-word. The woman isn't disputing being racist. And the comments that are being left on the site before they were suspended, and the attitudes behind it, weren't saying she's being railroaded, she's being misrepresented. They were simply saying, we support racism. And I think that's disgusting, no matter who's doing it. On the other hand, the people who are fundraising for Carmelo Anthony, the argument here isn't, yeah, we did something and we don't care, like the other woman. The argument is, we're being misrepresented here. We're being railroaded. This was a self-defense claim. This is not an act of violence. This isn't first-degree murder. I'm saying what they're saying. This isn't my argument. They're saying this is a first-degree murder claim that is wrong. This is actually self-defense, and we need the money to make sure that we get a fair trial. I think, and so whether you agree with his argument or not, I think raising money for a fair trial is different than raising money for a racist.
I mean, I think the common theme between the two, and this is not to pass any view about it at this stage, although I have strong views about it, I guess the common theme is that both of them say that as a result of all the publicity, they've been doxxed and had all their personal details put everywhere on social media, which is, of course, the modern scourge which gets involved. And that as a result, they've had death threats and they have security issues and they have to move home and so on. I understand that part of the argument. When you're at the center of a firestorm in America and you're not used to public attention, then the levels of intimidation, threats, and so on that can come your way can be extremely intimidating, if not outright dangerous. So it's different really to taking a view about either of the cases to simply say that the commonality is that they both, I think, have said in defending the amounts that have been raised is, well, we have to defend ourselves. Either, as you're putting it, through the courts, but also in his case, the alleged killer, that he has also, I think, had direct threats against him. And in the case of the mother using the M-word in that despicable manner, she has said she's had a lot of threats too.
My quick response to that would just be, let's assume everybody's telling the truth. Let's assume she's telling the truth, and let's assume he's telling the truth. If he's telling the truth and he was doing self-defense and he's getting harassed and doxxed, and of course we already know lies have been told about his GoFundMe campaign saying they were spending it on mansions and cars, all the kind of racist tropes. If that's true, he's being mistreated, and I think that's a sort of very easy case to make. When it comes to her, however, let's assume she's also telling the truth, that she used the word, she thinks the kid was acting like one, she feels like she has the right to use that word against that small baby because of whatever age-appropriate thing the kid did. If she's telling the truth and she's getting doxxed and harassed, I don't know if I want to reward her behavior with $500,000. I don't think she should be doxxed. I don't think she should be harassed. I think she has been mistreated to the extent that no one should be. You have a right to be racist. You have a right to free speech in this country. But I'm not donating money for it, and I feel a lot worse about her GoFundMe than the one for the person who's been railroaded.
Yeah. Well, Lily Gaddis, you posted a defense of Shiloh on X. It's been viewed 2.5 million times, in which it was entitled, "White People Are Finally Fighting Back. Stand with Shiloh Hendricks." What did you mean by that? Tax day has passed, but for millions of Americans, that's where the trouble begins. The IRS is now ramping up enforcement for those who missed the April deadline or still owe back taxes. Well, today's sponsor, Tax Network USA, can still help. If your books are a mess, if you're self-employed, or if you're a business owner, Tax Network USA specializes in cleaning up financial chaos and getting you back on track quickly. They say the IRS is applying enforcement pressure at levels they've never seen before. But even after the deadline, it's not too late to take control. The consultation is completely free. Acting now could stop penalties, threatening letters, and surprise levies before they escalate. Call 1-800-958-1000 or visit tnusa.com/peers. That's tnusa.com/peers. Let Tax Network USA make the next move, not the IRS.
Here's the thing. White people have been under attack for years. It's been systematic racism. As much as Black people and people of color want to talk about systematic racism in the United States, it's quite the opposite. They get preferential treatment when it comes to getting a job, when it comes to getting into colleges. White people, on the other hand, have been getting attacked relentlessly. Look at 2016 and BLM and all the riots. We just had to sit back and watch people burn down our cities and do nothing about it. So the way to fight back against essentially this anti-white hatred that's been systemically, ingrained in U.S. society is with white unity. We don't see white unity on our side.
Hang on. Okay, but hang on. Sorry, just to be clear, this has got nothing to do with anything you've just said. This is a disgusting racist woman who repeatedly spews the M-word, first at a young child, and then at the person taking the video of her, does it with complete impunity, does it numerous times. We are talking about a bona fide, unquestionable racist. So I don't understand why what you've just said to me bears any relation to white unity or anything that you've just said. She's just a racist. End, isn't she? You wouldn't dispute that.
It's not about her. It's not about her. It's about
white people
finally coming together and supporting another white person. And it doesn't matter.
Why would you want to support a white racist?
Because I want to support free speech, and you cannot have free speech in a country.
No, that's fine. You can support free speech, but you also have to be accountable for what you say. Would you use the N-word out of interest?
Yes.
You would?
Mm-hmm. I do quite frequently.
You use the N word quite frequently. Well, why? Other than the fact you're a despicable racist, are you?
Some would say I am. I guess according to the ADL, I'm a white supremacist. I'm a neo-Nazi.
Yeah. Well, if you use the N word repeatedly, you are a racist, then, are you? Are you?
Sure, I'll embrace that. If that means forwarding, helping white people achieve freedom of speech, real freedom of speech, which, by the way, Shiloh Hendricks is being attacked on all fronts. They're trying to bring legal charges against her. They're trying to get her children taken away. So you were saying Carmelo Anthony, it doesn't matter. That's a different.
Sorry, but just to
kind
be
of
clear, you just said to me you use the N word regularly. In what context? Do you use it with black people?
Yes, if it's appropriate.
When would it be appropriate to use the N word? When would it be appropriate?
Anytime I feel like it.
So you're an unashamed racist.
Correct.
Well, do you understand that makes you a despicable human being?
I guess so. I don't really care. I mean, why are we not talking about Shiloh Hendricks? Why are we talking about?
Well, actually, I think you've moved it on in this debate very quickly to your own racism, which explains why you've supported her in public and why you've got all these views. You see no problem with a woman shrieking the N-word repeatedly because you yourself are a despicable racist, and you've just proudly admitted that with a smug grin on your face, which is pretty horrifying, actually, for most people to have to watch. And shame on you. You're entitled to do it, and I'm entitled to call you despicable.
Well, shame on white people for allowing themselves to be systematically discriminated against in the United States. This is our country. This is a country that should be.
What do you mean your country?
Because I'm white and my
What, there are no black people in American history? Is that what you're saying? That they've all just landed in America, invading your white country? Is that your position?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, they were brought here technically.
My God, do you understand how dumb you sound?
This is stupid. This is stupid and racist. And at some point, we have to ask ourselves, do we want to reward this kind of disgusting behavior by platforming it?
I don't disagree, Mark. Listen, I didn't know she was going to say that. I don't disagree with you.
No. Yeah. I'm with you. I don't think you knew ahead of time. I'm saying at this moment, someone who's saying it's technically black people brought up. No, technically, Africans were stolen, enslaved, and they built this country. And the idea that you can justify calling a baby the N-word by saying that white people are losing the country is absurd. It's morally bankrupt, and it's honestly besides the point. I mean, all these are just distractions from the fact that she wants to justify dehumanizing and even animalizing a small black child. It's disgusting.
What is it?
Yeah, I never said that.
No, but you may as well have done because you're just an unashamed.
That's the implication of your racist.
Let me bring in Myron Gaines because you've been smirking and laughing. What's funny about any of this?
Well, I mean, I find it interesting that you guys want to virtue signal and wag the finger and say she's a racist and everything else like this.
No, she admitted she's a racist.
Well, let me
I'm not wagging a finger at anybody.
She's self-identified as a racist.
But Myron, with respect, Myron, I don't need to wag a finger when somebody says, yeah, I'm racist. I use the N-word against black people. I don't care. That's a racist. I'm not wagging any finger. I'm not accusing anybody. She is admitting it proudly. Even you can't defend that, surely.
Everybody is racist to some degree. The reality is it depends on, a lot of people want to be politically correct. A lot of people want to sit there and say, I'm not racist at all. We all have biases. We all have stereotypes. We all make jokes. We all are racist to some degree. Now, how racist you are is a whole other situation, but everyone is racist. That's number one. Next thing I want to say, see, I think this Shiloh Hendricks and Metcalf situation is a microcosm of a much bigger problem. And that bigger problem is what I call systemic organization. And what I mean by this is for decades, we've had black people literally running around with black supremacy, committing crimes, not getting accountability for their actions, and then they blame the system for it. For example, George Floyd, criminal. Ferguson, criminals. Freddie Gray, criminal. A lot of these people are criminals, and what ends up happening is they challenge the police officer, they get into a physical altercation, things go left, they die, something happens, use of force is utilized, and then they want to cry about the result, when in reality, it's not the police killing black people, it's black people killing black people. And if you want to talk about black on white violence, black people kill white people 2 times as much. And on top of that, most of the shootings in America, a lot of the times, are white cops killing other unarmed white men. So this whole systemic racism or police brutality or, oh, it's all so messed up, the reality is this. Black people have been able to get away with a ridiculous amount of privilege in America for a very long time. They're able to be racist with impunity. They're able to call white people crackers without being challenged back. And quite frankly, white America's had enough of it, and the chickens have come to roost. Now, look, am I saying that's awesome? Am I saying that's great? No, but for literally the better part of almost 2 decades since the Obama era, we've had to have BLM and liberalism shoved down our throats, and quite frankly, we're all tired of it.
Right, but just to be clear, you would have no problem with one member of this panel openly saying she uses the N-word at black people with impunity and is proud of being a racist. You have no problem with that?
My worldview on the protection of the First Amendment and freedom of speech overrides my personal feelings. She has the right to say
That's fine.
it.
You can support the First Amendment, but you can also have a personal view about what she said.
My feelings are irrelevant. The Constitution is the Constitution. That's what matters.
Oh, that's fascinating. Hold on. So when it comes to chastising black Americans about their behavior, about calling white people crackers, as you say, about their moral claims, about the racist system, you can levy a judgment against black Americans for all the things they do. But when it comes to this woman saying the N-word, and this other woman endorsing it and saying that she herself uses the N-word, now all of a sudden we can only talk about the Constitution and the legal right. We can't offer any moral judgment against it. That's disingenuous. And it's as the only black American up here, that's quite frustrating to hear.
Here's the thing. If you want to be soft and get offended by that, that's your fucking problem, not mine.
Let me ask Ricky.
We're not even.
Let me ask Ricky. Ricky,
this isn't about being soft any more than when you were desperately saving these white people.
Hold on. This sensitive nature that you have is precisely why we have this problem.
It's not about being sensitive. It's about I didn't articulate. Hold on. Let me finish, Myron. Let me speak and then I'll let you respond. Myron, sure. I didn't articulate any sensitivity here. What I said, in the same way that you levied a judgment against black people, I'm levying one against the claims you're making. I'm no more sensitive than you were when you made your claim. I'm simply saying I disagree with you. And to immediately jump to you're being sensitive is just a distraction. I'm making an argument here. Just respond to my argument.
No, and my argument to respond to that is this. Political correctness, liberalism, and making sure that we are politically correct and don't use certain words to offend people is precisely why we're in the situation that we're in. For decades, we've had to literally tiptoe around saying certain things around certain people, while the other group of people has been able to have impunity and be able to be as racist as they want to be, as violent as they want to be, without any type of consequence. And if you call it out, you're labeled a racist. The reality is this. Black people don't want to live around black people. I don't want to live around a bunch of black people. I move to neighborhoods where it's majority white because I know I'm safe. Now, this is uncomfortable reality that no one wants to say, so I'll say it for them. Black people commit a lot of crimes. A majority of the violent crime committed in the United States is committed by a small percentage of people, and they tend to be black men. Look, the reality is the reality. People don't want to say it, but the political correctness and being nice and not wanting to tell the truth is precisely this problem. And the reason why you're seeing all the support for Metcalf and Shiloh, etc., is because white people have not been able to step up and say what they want to say for a very long time because of what I said before, systemic, organized, where they don't take accountability for their decisions.
Let me bring in Ricky to respond. Ricky.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to say that I agree that virtue signaling went too far, that political correctness went too far, but we're going from virtue signaling being the norm and being praised to now vice signaling being the norm and being praised. It's not just a matter of does this woman have the right to use that word? I believe that she has the right. I disagree with it. But is she now being rewarded with $500,000? Why are we rewarding people for performing vice instead of virtue? This is not healthy. This is destructive to our society. This is destructive to our social fabric, to our culture, to our ability to live with other fellow Americans. It's gross to reward someone for bad behavior. It's one thing to tolerate it, to say that she has the right to do it, but she called an autistic 5-year-old the N-word. Like, I'm sorry, but I feel like we're kind of like missing the point in the actual context. You can say that it's part of this bigger meta story of black and white America, but it actually is just like a short little clip, and you don't even know the context of it, and it's actually gross, and if we can't just say that it's gross and bad, then I don't really know where we are.
Well, I think it's interesting to me that Lily Gaddis, you retweeted Nick Fuentes, the white supremacist, by saying he said black people just raised $500,000 for a cold-blooded killer who stabbed a white teenager to death. So I don't want to hear one word about the Shiloh Hendricks fundraiser. Either everyone gets to be tribal or nobody does. Why would you retweet that?
Because I agree with it. Because we have to fight fire with fire. I mean, at some point, why
How about nobody does?
Why are Jewish people allowed to be tribal? Why are black people allowed to be tribal? But as soon as white people stand up for themselves, we're labeled a racist. And by the way, you call people racist when you want them to stop talking about things.
No, I called you a racist because you admitted you were racist. Hang on. I called, just to be clear, I called you a racist because you openly, proudly admitted you're a racist. So it wasn't a question of exposing you or pointing my finger or trying to get this out of you. You proudly sat there, bold as brass, and said, yeah, I use the N-word all the time against black people. I'm a racist and I'm proud of it. That's what you did.
Racism is just having a preference. I prefer not to live around black people. I prefer not to live in a country where white people in our country are disproportionately attacked by black people. Where in my country, you can have an Austin Metcalf where he asks a guy to leave and he gets stabbed in the heart. I prefer that. That's a preference. Now, what a real racist is, in my opinion, is seeing someone as less human. I'm a Christian. I believe everyone's created in God's image. So I don't see anyone as less human. But that doesn't mean I'm not allowed to have a preference and say, I don't like what happens to be coming out of this community or that community. How is that a bad thing? How is that not just a preference?
Because you've literally made black people sound lesser humans. You don't want to live around them. You want to use the N-word in relation to them, a word that you know causes that community unbelievable offense.
Is that my fault? Is that my fault? If they have bad behavior, if they want to act in a certain way, if I have to cross the street and be afraid that maybe because of the crime statistics that are very real, by the way, is that my fault or is that their fault for having bad behavior?
That's mind-boggling to me for multiple reasons. I mean, we're talking about bad behavior. You know, we've never lynched you, we've never enslaved you, we've never done any of the deep-seated structural forms of injustice to white people that white people have done to black people, and yet to claim some kind of moral superiority in the midst of, and again, in the context of a conversation where a white woman is calling a 5-year-old autistic child the N-word, and we're talking about black people's bad behavior. This is absurd. And the idea of fighting fire with fire, again, is a dishonest argument. Just to take us back to the point here, the people who are supporting Carmelo Anthony's campaign believe that he was wrongfully charged and they're trying to get him legal defense. The people who are defending this woman are saying, yes, we know you called the 5-year-old autistic black child the N-word, and we want more of it. We approve of it. We support it. These are not the same thing. And it's bonkers to me that we couldn't all stand and say, hey, it is wrong to call a 5-year-old autistic black child the N-word. I mean, Myron, let me just ask you that question. I think this is a yes or no question. Correct me if I'm wrong. Do you think the woman was wrong to do what she did to that child in that park?
I don't approve of that. But what I will say is that it's very important to understand the entire context of what led us to this position. Because again, Metcalf and Hendricks is a microcosm of a much larger problem. Earlier, we were talking about tribalism when you were mentioning Nick Fuentes' tweet. Here's the thing. Black people could be as tribal as they want to be. You have people like Tariq Nasheed, Dr. Umar Johnson running around about black power and marry black women and keep it in the hood and all this other stuff. But if white people assemble and say, you know what, white power, we need to keep our nation white, they're immediately ostracized and labeled as supremacists, and they get banned off every single platform. I find that interesting. And matter of fact, you went ahead and
Isn't that the same thing?
No, actually, it is the same thing. Because here's the problem with black people.
No, it's not.
Hold on, let me finish this. Black people practice the very racism they cry about. You guys can gather together and say Black Lives Matter, Black Power, but if white people get together and say white power, gather together, they're considered white supremacists and they get banned off every single platform. Why is that Jared Taylor and Nick Fuentes are banned off every platform for practicing white nationalism, but black people are allowed to stand every single platform getting interviews on a Breakfast Club? Explain that to me. There's a two-tier situation here where black people are able to benefit off of being racist while whites are not. And what we're dealing with right now in America is literally a backlash to this black supremacy has been able to run around unchecked for a long time, and no one has the balls to call it out. Here's the other thing I want to say. Everyone's flipping out over Shiloh Hendricks is saying the N-word.
Can I respond to the point you just made, though?
No, hold on. Nobody flipped out like this when the United States was getting destroyed in 2020 because of black protests destroying every liberal city in America. So I don't want to hear it about, she made $100,000 because she said the N-word. Who cares? They destroyed billions of dollars of structure because someone got killed who was a criminal. That's the problem in America. You guys get a privilege that no one else gets to enjoy. You could be racist.
Okay. And all right, I have to hang on.